Welcome to the Ketones and Coffee Podcast with Lawrence Manaig, where we explore the ketogenic lifestyle and how it can improve your physical and mental health. Each week, we bring you valuable insights and advice from experts to help you on your journey to a healthier lifestyle. This episode is brought to you by BasicKetogenicLifestyle.com, where Lawrence coaches individuals with depression to reverse their symptoms and achieve a healthier, happier life using an evidence-based approach. So sit back, relax, and join us as we dive deep into the world of ketones and coffee. Subscribe to the Ketones and Coffee Podcast today and never miss an episode.
I'm so excited for this. Our guest today is Craig Emmerich. Craig is a true pioneer in the keto community, a best-selling author, speaker, and an educator who has dedicated his life to unraveling the science behind the ketogenic lifestyle. As an international best-selling author of Keto, The Complete Guide, and the Carnivore Cookbook, Craig's expertise extends far beyond the pages of his book, as he possesses a deep understanding of how our bodies function and leverages this knowledge to assist clients in healing and losing weight, all by tapping into the power of their own biology. Craig has positively impacted the lives of tens of thousands of individuals, helping them regain their health and vitality. His mission is to make the journey towards wellness as seamless as possible, utilizing the principles of biology to guide his clients towards a sustainable lifestyle. I love it. Craig, welcome back.
Thanks for having me back on.
Craig, it's the second time Craig has been here on the Ketones and Coffee Podcast, and I believe it was the 8th episode. The 8th episode. Yeah, 2 years ago. Man, I just love watching you and Maria just, what you do in helping other people just achieve their best health. It's always an honor to have you, Craig. It's always an honor. What is it now? 20 years?
For us, yeah, over 20 years for Maria. And, almost 20 years of actually helping clients, Myself, I've been eating this way for 17, 18 years now. So, yeah, it's been a long time.
Awesome. I love your background there. Where are you at right now?
In our backyard. Yeah. Phone consult in our office, so I decided It's a beautiful day, I'm going to go outside.
Yeah. I love it. So let's dive in here, Craig. We have got a lot to discuss here, but I know, and also I don't have you forever here, so let's get to it. Those who doesn't know your background, Craig is an electrical engineer as a background, and so tell us about that backstory. I know your story, you've been here before, but for those who are new new listeners here, what got you to change your career and lifestyle? Let's talk about that.
Yeah, it started with my wife Maria. She, had some health issues. She had PCOS, acid reflux, IBS, and carrying around extra weight, even though she's doing all what she was told of, healthy whole grains and low fat and running marathons and all this kind of stuff. But she's still sick and overweight, and she decided to fix herself, and she just started researching and learning everything she could, reading books, reading articles, papers, and as she was implementing on herself, her PCOS went away and her acid reflux went away, and she lost the extra weight, even though, she stopped running marathons because it was hard on her joints, and all these improvements happened. And of course, everybody's asking her, "What are you doing?" Because you're looking great. And that's when she started to sort of help others, find this lifestyle, and that's 20 years ago. Myself, took a little longer because I like to brew beer and do a lot of different things that didn't align with this lifestyle so much. So it took me a little longer to come around. Have a strong German roots, and so once I finally did, it was a matter of I was eating what she was feeding me during the week, and it was great. But then on the weekends, I eat whatever I wanted, and I just started to realize I really feel pretty crappy on the weekends.
Yeah.
I don't want to feel this way anymore, so I want to feel this way all the time. And that's when I switched about 18 years ago. And then about, 13 or so years ago, her business, and we were writing books, and I was helping out in the background. Like, I'm the technical guy, so I was helping the website, make sure the website was working and doing stuff with that and helping her out. And finally, it just made sense that, let's focus all our time on this and our business and grow that. And I stepped away from engineering and dedicated my time full time to this. And I dove at that point, like 14 years ago, I dove into the science heavy. And I, ever since, been just, I get that engineering mindset. I got to study, and keep up on the latest, science and trends. And I've done that on the nutrition side now.
Yeah, it's been a family affair with you guys. I love watching your family just grow, and you, man, there's a lot to get into here, and it's great that since Maria was cooking for the household, like you said, like cooking for you in the weekdays, and you doing whatever, but it became evident that you were going to switch at some point, right? But
Yeah.
took you a few years. It worked on you though.
I don't know, 4 or 5 years from when she started to me. And yeah, it was just me getting in tune with my body and what my body was telling me. During the week, I felt great. I wouldn't have any energy slump. I felt, awesome mental clarity.
Yeah.
And on the weekends, I'd start feeling like crap again and digestive issues and all this stuff. And I'm like, well, just listen to your body. Do what your body's telling you is
That's a
making
big
you feel
thing.
better.
Yeah, that's a big thing. Listening to your body is a big thing. And this was, to get it into context, this is 20 years ago, There was no internet back then. It wasn't sticks and stones, right? But there was books, you got books. And nowadays, there's almost too much information, right?
There's like almost no YouTube back then. It was, just very little. I mean, it was, going to the library, getting, content where we could find it. Some online, you could find studies and things online, but not much, so it was a lot different than it is today, for sure.
So tell me this, Craig. You didn't get into this, but I want to be able to help people, create that sustainable lifestyle. But before that, they need to realize that this is for them, right? And for some, maybe something's ailing them, right? Maybe they have a disease, right? But the doctor is right there, and just if the doctor says no to a regimen or keto, it can be a big factor for someone who wants to change, right? So tell us about that confrontation with the doctor. I love Maria's story, by the way, about when she compared the visit, right, with your dog, I guess, right? And then
that was the original kind of her aha moment in this whole process. Was she went to the doctor, she had PCOS, all these issues, she had extra weight, and the doctor just said, those are the cards you're dealt, those are your genetics. Here's like 3 prescriptions for like depression and IBS and whatnot. And then that same week, our dog was losing patches of its hair, and we go to the vet, and the first question is, what are you feeding it? And like aha moment was, the doctor never said a thing or asked me a question about what I was eating. And yet, the first question at the vet is, what are you feeding it? And that's how messed up it is. And, from that perspective, what we typically tell people is just, don't say the word keto, because keto has a lot of negative connotations, and a lot of it's, false information from, terrible studies or just general, bad mouthing, or, doesn't have a good, image or whatever. And so we just tell people, tell your doctor that I'm cutting out processed foods and sugar, and I mean, right there's a good, everybody would agree that's a good step, right?
Yeah.
And, you don't have to say the word keto. You just tell them cutting out a lot of the processed junk and junk processed foods and carbs and sugar. And, they'd probably go along with that then.
Yeah, because the conventional way is relying heavily on medications, right? They would see you for a few minutes and, they would know more. Like, doesn't make sense, right? You should know more about your body, compared to, your doctor seeing you for 10 minutes.
Well, the healthcare system in America, especially, it's not preventative. It's just you get people coming in, and the way that it's all structured, and the way that they're paid. Like a good friend of ours, Dr. Ted Neiman, out in Seattle, he still practices, and he told me that he could sit with a patient for 10, 15 minutes, prescribe 3 medications, and he'll get paid more than if he would have sat for an hour and talked to them about diet and how to change their diet. So you sit with them for an hour and talk about changing diet and lifestyle, and you will get paid less than 15 minutes and a couple of prescriptions.
Yeah.
So, for a doctor standpoint, what are they being incentivized to do? Not to change lifestyles and change diet, to just throw some pills at them, move on to the next patient in 10, 15 minutes. And that's
Yeah.
we got to fix that. I don't know how we do it, but
Yeah. But we are, right? You help,
we're trying.
a lot of people, you help thousands of people transition to the keto lifestyle because I love your bio because it says helping clients create a sustainable lifestyle, and that's what I want, like helping people create a sustainable lifestyle. You can't just jump into a diet or a quote unquote diet not knowing what you're getting into, right?
Yeah.
You could have a lot of misconceptions about keto or what not to do, what to do, and it may not be even correct, right? So
Yeah.
a lot of people are coming into keto with some ailment, insulin resistance, right? And I love this topic of insulin resistance because you have I was part of your certification program at Keto-Adapted, and I love how you talked about insulin resistance and what it is. So let's get into it, Craig, for our listeners. I know most of them are maybe coming from insulin resistance. Let's because you have delved into the science and how this works. They may only know that keto works for fat loss but the mechanism are in play here. How does it actually work? First, can you go in detail on what insulin resistance is and its root cause?
Yeah, that's a very important topic and a little bit misunderstood, I think, in this community in general. And that's why I think it's so important. That's, I think, the engineering mindset in me is I want to get to root causes and the mechanisms of, how this works, right? And if you look at it in the latest science, all the latest lipidologists, the lipid researchers, look at it as a fat-centric disease. The fat cells, or the adipose tissue, that's the cells in your body that store the fat. That's where a lot of this originates. And the reasons for it is that I remember hearing this when I was a kid, and it didn't click to me till later in life, the implications of it, but you don't make new fat cells after a certain age. You have so many fat cells, and after a certain age, like when you're a toddler, you don't make new ones. Vast majority of people. Only a few rare cases are there of people who can continue to make fat cells. Maybe we can talk about that later, but almost everybody else, you have so many fat cells as a toddler, and then from that point on, you only fill or empty those fat cells. Okay? And so you think about that puts sort of a limit on it for you as a person, how much fat you can store, right? Because the fat cells can only store so much fat, each individual one, until they're like, okay, I can't store any more fat. If I do, I'm going to burst. I'm going to, not going to work. I'm going to literally burst. So it's like a balloon. You can only fill it so much. And so what the fat cell does is it says, stop sending fat. I'm going to reject insulin because I don't want any more fat stored in me. Okay? So the fat cell itself is becoming insulin resistant because it's too stuffed. Well, if you got one or two of these, not a big deal. If you've got a lot of fat cells, most of your fat cells that are stuffed and inflamed, well, now what's going to happen? Fat comes in the diet, and the body's like, I need to store this. I don't want sky-high triglycerides in the blood. I got to put it somewhere. But all the fat cells are saying, no, I don't want it. Well, where's it going to go? It's going to go to the liver, and you're going to have fatty liver. It's going to go to the pancreas, fatty pancreas. That's type 2 diabetes and metabolic syndrome right there. And so this can happen if you have very few fat cells, but they're all stuffed. And we've had this. We had a woman who's 105 pounds and type 2 diabetic. Because she had so few fat cells, they would get stuffed and inflamed very rapidly. She could not really gain weight in that way. Where you can also have somebody who's 100 pounds overweight, and their A1C is fine, and their metabolic markers are fine, because they have a lot of fat cells, and they're not all stuffed and inflamed yet, right? So that kind of it helps you understand the situation with type 2 diabetes, where somebody can be type 2 diabetic when they're 100 pounds, or not be type 2 diabetic when they're 300 pounds. It's because of how many fat cells they have. It's called the personal fat threshold. And it's really important to understand that, in the context of a ketogenic lifestyle too, because there's certain communities in keto where they just talk about make sure you get 80% or more of your calories from fat, and just focus on adding a stick of butter a day and these kind of things.
Yeah.
That can be really dangerous for these people that are already at that personal fat threshold, right? Even in the context of cutting your carbs out, right? So if you cut your carbs to nothing, but you're adding a stick of butter and whatever, and your fat cells are already stuffed and inflamed, guess what? The body's like, what am I going to do with all this fat? Your triglycerides in your blood will shoot way up, and you'll see this in somebody like this. If they're type 2 diabetic and they're overdoing the fat, triglycerides will go through the roof. Their fasting glucose will actually increase, even though they're not eating carbs, because you're putting an overall load on insulin with all this extra fat and fuel that it's struggling to control all the fuels, including glucose. So even glucose will start floating up, and you're just making that situation worse. And so what you got to do is moderate the fat down a bit for those people, to allow them to burn more off the body and shrink those fat cells a little bit, so that they're not insulin resistant anymore. And that's the key.
That's another misconception right there. We'll talk about it later on, but I want to tell you a story. I keep throwing my dad into this, but he when he got diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, he thought it was fat. He thinks, I don't know if he still thinks this way. He thinks that it's genetic because he doesn't like sweets. He says, "Oh, how can it be because of sugar? I don't like sweets. I don't eat sweets." But I don't think people realize is that your body doesn't care if it's carbs or sugar or table sugar. It all becomes glucose in the body. Your body doesn't know the difference. I think that's where the disconnect is for some people, thinking it's genetic. Because I think why it's dangerous to think that, being it family related or genetic related, is because if it's genetic, then I can't do anything about it. So then I can do just whatever I want, or just take this pill, right? Because it's genetic, I can't do anything about it, right?
Exactly. And complex carbohydrates, if you will, it's really just a string of glucose molecules all connected together. And so something like a cracker or bread or these kind of things, they're not sweets, right? They're not sugar, but they turn into sugar as soon as it's digested. The digestive tract will just break apart those glucose molecules and pump them right into the bloodstream, and that's now just glucose.
It is sugar. I want to call those things sugar. It is. Carbs is sugar.
I mean, pretty much all carbohydrates turn into sugar in the body, once they're processed and digested. And so you really got to look at them as kind of the same thing.
So I don't know why, if you got diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, I don't know why it's not explained that way, because that's as simple as you can explain it. You can't just say, hey, have half of the rice, but why, right? But why? So I think they should even go further and talk about prognosis and how it can manifest after taking maybe metformin for a few years. What can happen down the line, right? So then the individual can make an informed decision of, okay, maybe there's another option, right?
I mean, that's the key is, and we talked about earlier, is just looking at your body and seeing how your body is reacting to things. And for me, that's as an engineer, I would always look at my systems as input and outputs, and if the inputs are wrong, my outputs are going to be wrong. That's I know. If my chip's doing the right thing, I have to have the right inputs in order to get the right outputs. And same thing with the body. If you're not putting the right inputs in, you're going to have bad outputs. You're going to have diabetes. You're going to have autoimmune disorders and conditions. That's a big part of it, is the diet that's going in, that input. And if you fix the input, a lot of times the output will fix itself.
Let's talk about specifics here, Craig. A lot of times individuals who are coming from the standard American diet will challenge, maybe our listeners on this fact. Let now give our listeners the answer, so that when asked, they have something profound to say, right? Let's get it straight here. What really causes inflammation and ultimately diseases in our body? Now, we talked a little bit earlier, but what is it specifically, and ultimately how can they reverse it? Feel free to explain in scientific terms or whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, inflammation can be caused by a lot of things, right? I mean, you know, inflammation can be from just processed sugars. Processed sugars causing spikes in insulin that can cause inflammation in the body from these huge spikes of glucose and insulin. Anything that you're sensitive to can cause inflammation, whether it's gluten or dairy or any of these common allergens. If you're eating it, you're going to cause inflammation in the body. Everything from external sources like viruses and things like that. There's a lot of different. There's even good sources of inflammation, right? There's exercise, there's sauna and cold therapy. Those are inflammatory processes in the body, but they're good inflammation. They're things that are. So there's really good and bad inflammation, and it's the chronic elevated inflammation from bad sources that over time causes the problems.
Okay.
So, it's this good inflammation of like sauna for a few minutes a day and what that does for you versus I'm always inflamed because I'm either I'm always stressed or I'm always eating gluten or whatever all day long forever. That's the stuff that over time can cause problems like cardiovascular disease, where it's causing inflammation in the artery walls and those kind of things. Those kind of disease processes that come from that chronic inflammation.
I want to talk to you about, Craig, about your run-ins with your doctor with Lyme disease. What was your experience like with your doctor?
Yeah, so that's another whole thing, with healthcare. Lyme disease just seems to be treated as, in some areas, doctors still think it's, chronic Lyme disease isn't really a thing. Like it's in your head. Right? And yeah, there's some doctors that are still like that they think it's in your head. It's not a real thing. We did 4 weeks of, a typical antibiotic and it should be gone. Well, it's not the case. And the other part of it is, even if you have a doctor that understands and whatnot, they do the standard Western blot Lyme test, which is a 2-stage thing where they test for certain bands of the Lyme virus and spirochete, and if they don't find certain bands, they don't do the second part of the test and they say you don't have it. But now, all the researchers and the top Lyme researchers will say the Western blot Lyme test is false negative like 70-80% of the time. So they'll say you don't have Lyme, but you really do. And that's what happened to me. I went to my doctor because I had these symptoms for a number of years and it sounded like Lyme to me, so I went in. Standard Western blot Lyme test said I didn't have it. And so I went another 2 years trying to figure out what was wrong with me.
So you didn't check all the boxes?
Well, what happened is, the ones they tested, the bands they tested in the standard Western blot Lyme test, I didn't have enough of them to do the next phase of the test, and at that point they say you're negative. It's the way the test is done. Where a couple years later I did the IGeneX test, which tests all the bands and all the co-infections, and I found out then that I had Lyme. And so that again, it's a more expensive test, and that's probably why they don't do it as often in the doctor's office, but they don't even offer it as an option. It's just it's a lack of education on the topic, really. Just like with nutrition, they have a lack of proper education on what is the proper diet, and so that's why they'll say keto is bad for you and those kind of things. Same thing with Lyme. They're just not educated well enough on Lyme to understand that Western blot Lyme test doesn't always catch them all. And if you've got continued symptoms, you should really look at other tests to see what might be going on. And that's what happened with me.
Well, you know what? The loser in all of this is those people who would stop to do the research about what's ailing them. Let's say, somebody who, like, say for example, your story, when they say that you didn't have Lyme. Some people would just maybe stop there, right? And not, dig into it more further, right? Because not a lot of people are like us who are very curious and who, you know, maybe wants a second, third opinion. Who's not who? Because some people are maybe, I don't want to say stuck with the one doctor, but
Yeah.
they ride or die with them, right? What they say
Yeah.
is, and a lot of people are the same, and they're not really
Searching for other answers.
searching for other answers. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
No,
what
I mean,
for those people, what do you say?
Well, you have to keep looking. I mean, same thing with my wife Maria. If she would have just accepted what the doctor said, that these are the cards you're dealt, and you're going to have PCOS and acid reflux and this extra weight the rest of your life,
Yeah.
and just accepted it, she would still be in the same situation, right?
Mhm.
But she didn't. She looked further, and same with me. If I would have just accepted that, a lot of times
Yeah.
with Lyme, what'll happen then is they'll get misdiagnosed as having fibromyalgia, or a lot of times even as it gets worse and worse, things like Parkinson's or ankylosing spondylitis, which I actually ended up having. But a lot of times because they don't know what's happening, they think it's not Lyme, they'll get misdiagnosed as something else, and they never really treat the Lyme. And that's the danger.
Yeah, that's very common. That's a common theme. I mean, I had a lot of people on the show. Just you can't just stop with one diagnosis. Like you have to really keep the search on, and it seems like it's a common theme that looking for the root cause is the best way possible into healing.
Yeah.
Right? It can't be the standard care. Looking at the standard care, you won't get anywhere. What's standard care for Lyme disease, anyways?
4 weeks of amoxicillin, or one of the typical antibiotics, and that's it.
Yeah.
You're supposed to be
That's it.
cured at that point, whether you still have symptoms or not. And at that point, if you still have problems, most healthcare professionals won't do much. They'll look at other things, or look at other, call it fibromyalgia or something else. You have to have a Lyme literate doctor who really understands Lyme disease that will take it further. And those are hard to get. And the one I'm working with right now, still, she's booked out months. And so that's the problem, is to get a doctor that's really literate on it and understands it. They're so far booked out that it's just hard to get care too. So it's tough.
Yeah. I mean, you have to entertain getting seeking out doctors will be, number one priority, who's open for exploring other treatment options, right? And that's just the reality.
There's more, it seems to be more functional doctors and other doctors, at least in the US here, that are open to those, looking at it more holistically and looking at other solutions. So that's good. But again, I think the ones that you do have, they get so busy because there's so many people searching for answers like this, they're booked out a ways. But once you find a good doctor like that, stick with them and keep working with them. I had one that was what's one of the good things that came out of COVID is, most of these doctors can now work remotely. You don't have to physically be there. And so actually the one doctor I'm working out with now is out of the East Coast, and we do Skypes like this. I've never been actually physically in her office, but I get labs done locally. They're sent to her. We Skype over online. So it's one of the good things that came from COVID.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Let's get back to keto for a second here. I want to get to help people to transition, and keto is known by the masses as a high-fat diet, like we talked about earlier. The tendency for people, once they get around the fat is bad part, they tend to overdo the fat, right? You talked about this earlier. Explain how this works to people, and why should they watch this closely, just the fat intake.
Yeah, so if you look at it, there's 3 basic macronutrients. There's fat, protein, and carbs. And if you're cutting the carbs to a minimum, say 20 grams or less, in this type of a lifestyle, now you've got protein and fat. Protein is very much dependent on your lean mass, right? If you're a 6 foot tall man with, goes to the gym every day and you've got lots of muscle, you need a lot more protein than a 100-pound woman who's very lean, and not as muscular. So you have a different protein goal based on your size, right? And so you calculate, what we do is we calculate a protein goal for a person, usually zero 0.8 to 1 times their lean mass for grams of protein a day. So if you're, make the math easy, if you're 150 pounds, 33% body fat, that means 100 pounds of lean mass. And that'd be, 80 to 100 grams of protein. Get at least that much. That's your protein goal. And then what's left? Okay, so you got carbs to a minimum. You're hitting your protein goal. The only variable left is fat, right? It's the only thing left to change. And so you change the fat based on your goals. If you want to burn more fat off your body, dial the fat in the diet down. Eat a little bit less fat in the diet. The body will burn a little more of its own stored fat, and you'll lose body fat. If you want to maintain, dial the fat up in the diet. And if you want to gain, dial it up even more, and you'll gain weight. It's that simple, right? So when you break it down that way, it's kind of hard to argue what else you would do in a ketogenic standpoint.
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend adjusting protein based on goals, because you need a certain amount for your muscle mass. And if you start adjusting down protein and eating less protein than is required for how much lean mass you have, you're going to start losing lean mass. You're going to start losing muscle. And that's very dangerous, especially as we get older.
Yeah.
Because after 50, 60, 70 years old, the amount of protein required to just build and maintain muscle goes up and up. You need even more protein just to start the process of building muscle and repairing muscle as you get older. And that's why so many people, when they get 60, 70 years old, they have sarcopenia and they lose a lot of muscle, right?
Yeah.
And you don't want to be frail when you're 70, right? You want to still be able to be active and out doing things and enjoying life. And so I look at today, the muscle you have is like a down payment on future vitality. Because if you have more muscle now, the more muscle you have now, you lose some when you get older, you're still going to be strong enough to be able to do what the things you want to do. If you lose too much now, when you get older and you start losing more, you're going to be frail. You could be in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
Not what you want later in life. And so lowering protein is not going to be a good solution for short or long-term health, in my opinion. And you look at it, the 3 macronutrients as well when it comes to micronutrients, right? Vitamins and minerals. So vitamins and minerals, where are they? Are they in the carbs? No. Primarily, typically not in the carbohydrates in the most bioavailable forms of those vitamins and minerals. Like vegetables, yeah, there's vitamins and minerals in them. Typically not the best absorbable form compared to animal proteins, but there are. But what's got the most? Animal proteins, by far, have the most vitamins and minerals. And where does that come in the animal proteins? Is it in the fat or the protein of the meat? It's in the protein. The protein has all the vitamins and minerals. The fat on the animal is maybe got a little vitamin A, some trace minerals, trace vitamins, and almost all the vitamins and minerals come from the protein. So again, what do you want to prioritize? Probably the protein, because that's where you're getting all your vitamins and minerals. Not so much the fat. The fat is mostly the energy that you need to function.
I remember myself about 3 years ago when I started keto, hearing about these stuff about, animal protein has more nutrients, or, you can lose fat with keto, or just you can eat bacon and whatnot, and all of this information. It was all overwhelming in the beginning. And if I had Googled keto before I started, I probably didn't follow through on the diet because of a lot of this misinformation. But I'm glad that I just jumped in, whether it's, just, not dirty keto in the beginning, but it helped me realize that what I was, carbohydrates, sugar, refined sugar, just eliminating those will, make you feel so much better. And, I cleaned up my diet since then. And, it's really hard for a lot of people to grasp the information that we're, if you're coming from a standard American diet, it's really going to be hard to, digest this information. But when you do start it and you and you combine it with, knowledge and information about keto and just learning from people who've done it, who've had success, from Craig, Maria. When you combine it with the diet and you're learning, you will understand because it's working. You're understanding why it's working, right? And
yeah, there's so much misinformation out there. Just one of the recent studies, the headline on the article was keto causes, I can't even remember what it was, increased whatever, some disease, right? And you go down and you look at the study that they're referencing. In the study, first of all, they didn't say keto, they said low carb. And the low carb group in this study was the group that ate less than 30% of their calories from carbs. 30%.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you're eating 2,000 calories, that's what, 150 grams of carbs?
Yeah.
There's nowhere, that's not keto.
It's not.
Yet,
that's the misconception.
That's what the title says on the article, right? So that's, again, all the misconceptions and the bad information that's out there. But yeah, I mean, we get the majority of the people that come to us as clients that are looking for help come to us looking for weight loss, right? That's the primary reason they initially come to us. They have some other health issues and whatnot that they're concerned about, but the majority of people come for weight loss. But the majority of people that stick with this lifestyle, it's because of the health.
Right.
They feel so much better. They get off medications. They have symptoms of, XYZ disease go down. They have all these health improvements. And that's why they stick with it. The weight loss is just an extra benefit, a little bonus.
Byproduct.
To how good they feel. That's what you got to focus on is, it's a lifestyle and you're going to feel so much better and improve your health so much. That's what it's about. It's not some quick fix weight loss diet.
Yeah. And again, it's the diet, if you look at it as a diet, it's going to be short term because the diet, it's short term.
Yeah.
That's what the diet culture wants you to do is to diet, right? Because you get off the diet and then you get fat again and you get back to the diet. It's just a cycle, and it starts the vicious cycle of binging and purging, and we're all very familiar with that, and it's not a good sign for, and it feeds the industry with money, of course. That's how they make their money, but for you, not so much. You're not gaining anything from that. So lifestyle, you gotta look at it as a lifestyle. I got a client. Go ahead.
Well, is it any diet on the planet? The number one cause for failure is non-compliance, meaning they go off the diet.
Yep.
So I don't care what you do. If you go back to what you were doing that made you sick and overweight in the first place, you're gonna get sick and overweight again.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Because you're looking at it too. You're absolutely dreading it when you're on a diet, right? And you want to get off it because maybe for the summer and then going back to your old habits, and plus that's not good for your metabolism, your metabolic health. It's gonna suffer when you do that. Great. I got a client who wants weight loss and at a weight loss stall, and when I tell them about the macronutrients oxidative priority lists in order, it's like a light bulb that turned on for them. I think this is crucial for people to know because it just aims to lose weight, right? Tell people what is the macronutrients oxidative priority and how do we make sure that we are always fat burning?
Yeah, so the body is pretty smart. When you eat something, so at rest right now, you and I are sitting here, we have 80 to maybe 100 calories of fuel in our entire blood volume. So all of our blood circulating has about 80 calories of fuel in it. That's all the carbohydrates. Usually 85 milligrams per deciliter is like 14 calories of carbohydrate. Free fatty acids, ketones, all of the fuels add up to maybe 80 calories. Okay? If you eat something and it's 500, 800 calories, and it's all dumping into the bloodstream, the body's like, whoa, I've got to deal with all this fuel coming into the bloodstream and I got to store it off because too much glucose in the blood will kill you. Too much fat, too high triglycerides is a problem. All of these things are, alcohol, too much alcohol can kill you. And so the body's got to prioritize. It's got to say, okay, I've got these fuels. I got alcohol, I've got carbohydrates, protein isn't really used as a fuel, but then fat. Those are my fuels. Well, what order am I going to make their priority? Which ones am I going to burn first? The ones I can't store or have little storage for, right? So alcohol has no storage in the body. There's no place the body can store alcohol. And so it has to burn it. That's the only choice it has. And so when you're drinking an alcoholic drink, and let's say you have some food with carbs and fat in it, guess what happens? It's burning the alcohol because it has to, and so it stores the carbs and it stores the fat because it can deal with those later, right? Put them into storage, and once I burned off all the alcohol, then I can go back to maybe burning glucose or fat. And so if you eat a high carb and fat meal while drinking, all that's getting stored off. Now, if you cut out the alcohol and just have carbs and fat, well, the carbs are still going to displace the fat because they're the next priority. There's only, 2,500 calories or so of glucose that you can store in your body, but a lot of that's locked away in the muscle as glycogen. So like 2,000 calories are in your muscle as glycogen. And that's really only used for like sprinting and extraneous exercise. The rest is in the liver. And there's only like 400 calories of glucose in the liver. So that's it. And so you don't have a lot of storage capacity for that glucose. And fat theoretically is unlimited in some people, right? I mean, there's literally people with like 1 million calories of fat on their body, where there's only like 400 in their liver. So fat is like this thing that's easy to store. You got a lot of storage capacity for it. So let's deal with that last, right? So let's burn the carbs, and then when the carbs are depleted, then we'll go back to burning fat. Well, if you cut the alcohol out and you cut the carbs out of the diet, now the body's down to fat, and it can be in this fat burning mode where it can burn the fat on the body or the fat coming in the diet. Doesn't really matter either way. It can burn either equally, and you're kind of in that fat burning state all the time. So that's kind of what you are when you want to live in this lifestyle, is you're primarily burning fat as your fuel most of the time.
So I got a question for you, Craig, because I saw this online, and it says alcohol can still be detected in your urine 3 to 5 days after you've taken alcohol.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that, but yeah, it depends how much you drink.
Yeah, I'm thinking, because if you're drinking, on a weekly basis, and you're trying to burn off that alcohol, you're basically, if that's true, you're basically burning fat, 2 days in a week. That's it.
Yeah, especially if you start adding carbs too to the mix.
Oh, right, exactly.
Rarely burning fat. You're just burning off all the other fuels.
Yeah, because I got clients that says, that's drinks on a weekly basis, once a week. I don't know what to say to them, right? Because what would you say?
I would say if they're serious about weight loss, they have to cut the alcohol. And especially if they stall. If they're stalled and they're drinking on the weekends, you got to cut that alcohol, because it's not just, there's so many other things with alcohol too. It's not just the oxidative priority and that part of it. Alcohol will increase estrogen, decrease, it can increase estrogen, but also it decreases testosterone by like 300% when you're drinking it. So when you have high alcohol in the blood, testosterone plummets. And that's why, guys that go to the gym and then go have drinks afterwards, that's the worst combination, because when your body needs the testosterone to rebuild the muscle after a workout, you're drinking and driving your testosterone down. That's a bad combination. So, I mean, there's a lot of things about alcohol that aren't ideal, especially for weight loss and body composition.
Yeah, and I want to get to address some misconceptions for people here. What would you say to people that says the keto diet is just another fad diet? Because I would post something and people would comment, "Hey, it's 2023 and people are still doing keto." Have you ever heard of that?
Well, it was like year 2002 and we were doing keto, so I mean, over 20 years for us, and we don't. This is a lifestyle for us.
Yeah.
I don't. To me, again, I think it's the label
Mm-hmm.
that can get some people hung up. Like if you tell somebody, "Yeah, I'm eating meat and low carb vegetables." Oh, okay, sounds great,
Right.
right? Like that sounds like a great plan.
Yeah.
But you put the label keto on it,
Yeah.
saying I'm not eating the bread and the sugar and crap.
Yeah.
Suddenly, it's a bad connotation. But
Yeah.
I think that's part of it is just the framing of it and
Yeah.
what you're doing.
Yeah, and if you just say, "Hey, I'm cutting out the processed sugar. I'm cutting out refined sugar or processed food." Sorry, you're cutting out seed oils. You don't have to
Yeah.
name it. I mean, if you're cutting out the
Yeah.
junk, just say, "I'm cutting out
Hey,
the junk."
you cut out the processed food, and that'll
Yeah.
take care of most of the seed oils, most of
of it. Yeah.
processed carbs and all those things. Yeah, and I get online. You got to say you're keto, and that's what you're doing, and it is. But
Yeah.
if for those people that question it, just say I eat meat and low carb vegetables. What's wrong with that?
Yeah.
Right? It's like
Yeah.
there's nothing. That's what our ancestors used to eat, and
Right.
I
Right.
think it's fine.
And I always go to the ancestors explanation, because that
Yeah.
gets them to think, oh really, oh babies are born in ketosis, right? It's
Yeah.
it's a state, it's a your body's state, it's a metabolism.
Well, even going back into very early ancestors, I like to go to when humans became human in the first place, right?
Right.
So if you go back 50, 100,000 years ago, Neanderthals and early humans were wandering around and they developed these big brains, right? And then became what we are today, evolved into human beings.
Yeah.
What were they eating when that
Yep.
happened? Well, if you look at, they've done tons of studies now on the collagen of the bones in the fossils. And what you can do is you can look at the nitrogen content of the collagen, and by that types of nitrogen groups, you can tell exactly what protein they ate. The type, whether it was plant or animal, and even what types of animals it was eating, right? Well, they've done this over and over and over, and they also do it on different animals of that period, like lions and hyenas, and the humans of that time were apex carnivores. They ate more meat than lions or hyenas,
Yeah.
and were more apex carnivores on the food chain than either of them. And so, that's what made us grow a big brain and shrink our guts, because we were eating carnivore. We were eating animal proteins that were nutrient dense and grew these big brains. And so, going
Love it.
back that far, I'm just eating what made us human in the first place.
Yes, I love it. I love it. I love that. I'm gonna steal that. Okay. Another thing that stops people is, okay, you go keto, you can't have fruits. I mean, you can't have mangoes. I mean, mangoes are healthy. I mean, that probably stops it. Okay, you can't have mangoes. Come on.
Well, I would say two things. Yeah, I have fruit. I eat olives. I eat avocados. I eat tomatoes. I just don't eat the ones full of sugar, right?
Yeah.
And then I would turn that on its head and say, do you eat any liver or organ meat? And if they say no, I would say, well, you're going to cut out a whole food group, right? I mean, food group is what we define it to be, right? Do you eat bugs? That's a food group. You could eat it, and it would be healthy for you. But do you want to eat it? No. Same. It's all of a
Okay.
choice. Your
Yeah.
diet is what you choose to put in your mouth, and everybody is on a diet. Everybody on the planet is on a diet. They choose to put certain things in their mouth and choose not to put other things in their mouth. And
Yeah.
that's why
I think for some people that the reason why they're maybe confused is because the thought of an apple a day keeps the doctors away, right? That's one. Of course, healthy orange juice, right? How can orange juice be bad for you? So
that's we are so ingrained in this
right.
world of this fruits and unlimited fruits and vegetables. There's nothing that could ever go wrong with them eating tons of these, and
Yeah.
we see time and time again people. I mean, and the other part of the problem is, the fruits and vegetables of today look nothing like they did.
Yeah, because they would
50 years ago.
come at you with it's natural. It grows from the ground. But to your explanation.
Yeah. So the we did some comparisons in our Carnivore Cookbook. You put up what a banana looked like when it was wild, a couple hundred years ago, compared to a banana now, and it's like 5 times the sugar, and all of this used to be real starchy and seedy, full of seeds and small. Now it's long, no seeds, and full of sugar. And you could go down the line of every single fruit and most of the vegetables, and that's an evolution that has happened.
For you. Yeah.
We're crossbreeding, we're hybridizing, we're selectively grabbing different strains that, like even strawberries, the modern strawberry, the big old thing we see in the store now, that's only like 150 years old. They found a strain that grew bigger, and it grew every year, not every 2 years, and they just started replanting that one, that modification that happened somehow, and it's in the seeds, and they keep doing that, and now you've got a strawberry that's the size of your hand. Sometimes. And yet the wild strawberries, that we actually had some wild strawberries by my father-in-law's cabin up here in northern Wisconsin. They still grow out in the woods occasionally, and we found a patch of wild strawberries, and we picked for like an hour and got enough to fill the palm of my hand. And they weren't sweet, they were tart, and maybe the size of one strawberry in the store from an hour of picking these things, right? And so we've hybridized and made these sweeter and sweeter and less nutrient dense fruits and vegetables. Now, even recent, we're still doing it. You hear the cotton candy grapes. They have they have like 3 times the sugar of normal grapes.
Wow.
Like, if normal grapes are already full of sugar, you got to add 3 times the sugar to them. Hybridize this thing into just a ball of sugar. I mean, it's just, there's nothing in the fruits and vegetables of today that looks anything like 200 years ago.
If I would have to bet my money on what caused my dad's type 2 diabetes, it would be fruit. Like, he is a banana guy, and he ate like 5 in a day. If I would have to bet, that was it. That did it. Because he doesn't eat a lot of sweets, according to him, right? But still managed to come up with type 2 diabetes, which is for his doctor too, right? He wasn't diagnosed with pre-diabetes. They didn't catch his pre-diabetes, which probably is a common thing for a lot of people. They would just catch you with type 2, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
totally. It's in reality, I would argue that the people that are diagnosed as pre-diabetic are already diabetic by the standards of healthcare. When they're talking like A1C of 6 is still not technically diabetic. I mean, to me, you're diabetic, right?
When I hear somebody talk, against, the lifestyle, I have so much empathy for them, because I was there. I was there. I was a critic, not a critic. What's the other word?
You were living the lifestyle too.
I was there. I didn't think it was, but when you live there on that side, it's hard to grasp what we're saying, right? Because it's so out of the box. It's so different from what the government is saying, from what the nutritional guidelines are saying. Like, that's why it's so hard. That's why I have so much empathy for people who does not understand. Also, they don't know that they could feel much better, right? And if the saying, when the student is ready, the teacher appears, or something like that. Right? When they're ready, you can't just push the information, right? Like my parents, I can't just do it until they come to you.
Well, same with my parents. How long I've been doing this and whatnot, and they don't eat this way. Neither of our parents do, really. And I mean, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink, right? I mean, they have to want to do it. And if they don't want to change their lifestyle, there's not a lot you can do.
Not a lot you can do, unless they come to terms with it. Unless they somehow reach that point of, hey, I might want to try this, right? So.
Yep. That's what we do. Is we're always there. We are always willing to answer any question they have or help them in any way if they ask for it. But yeah, we can't push it on them, and it's got to be them asking for it. And if they ever do, we'll be there to help them out.
Awesome. I want to end that there. It's perfect. Where can people find you, Craig?
We have a web page I made called ketomaria.com, and from there you can get to our blog, you can get to our keto-adapted.com website for all our ebooks and services, and then at the bottom there's a bunch of links to all of our social media. So ketomaria.com, you can get to everything.
All right, we'll link everything down below so you guys can check that out. All right, perfect. Craig, thank you so much for sharing your story here and your knowledge to our listeners. Thank you so much, Craig.
Thank you so much for having me back on.
All right, Craig. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Subscribe to the Ketones and Coffee podcast today and never miss an episode.